Hi, I'm RAFE HAZE, and I'm going to read you an excerpt from my debut novel, The Next. I'm going to give you a little context about it. I started The Next in January of 2013 and then finished it in June of 2013. The year preceding that was really a difficult year. 2012 was hard personally and professionally, and was kind of at the point where I just couldn't see any door to step through to get beyond this kind of oppressive, heavy feeling I was feeling all year. And it was on my birthday around December that I decided, you know what, Rafe, you just got to write your way through this. And so started writing. And I turned to something that always gave me comfort growing up, or anytime I had the cold or flu, I turned to Alfred Hitchcock's movie Rear Window as a template. And Rear Window is about, it stars Jimmy Stewart and Grace Kelly. It's about a guy who's incapacitated in his apartment, and he gets looking out the window and he thinks he's identified a neighborhood murder, and with the help of Grace Kelly, his glamorous co-star, he solves it. I just use that as a jumping off point and elaborated a lot from it. And rather than using a broken leg as the means which kept him incapacitated, I used this really oppressive feeling that I was feeling, and I made this character agoraphobic to some degree, and I could relate to that feeling of really not wanting to step out of your apartment, and it just energized a lot of the subtext of a lot of this novel. So let me just get into it, and let me give you some setup. This is a scene in which the main character is potentially splitting up with his girlfriend, Joanna. He has met this very attractive detective named Marsoli, who is investigating the disappearance of a tenant that lives above my apartment. And the neighbors, the main character has rudely and crudely given really names that reflect the negative state that he's in. He's called one neighbor the beached whale because she's large and doesn't do anything but sit and watch TV on her futon. The couch potatoes, who is this gay couple who just eat pasta and bread all night long and really just watch TV and don't do much. And then of course there's other neighbors, but among them, the Layworths, who he also calls Mr. and Mrs. Perfect. And the Layworths are, very upwardly mobile, successful, 2 kids, beautiful, architectural digest type of apartment, whom Joanna really admires. So let's just get into this. When I first met Joanna, I met this woman who spoke with faraway, melancholic peacefulness of hazy dreams. She seemed to me to be a fulcrum between a distant, tragic past and a distant, hopeful future. She believed embracing both of these enriched life's tranquility and excitement. She had once been a beautiful haiku made unfathomably profound by its very simplicity, and she inspired song after song from my feverish fingers. But too much New York, or too much hope, and too few results, or most likely too much proximity to me, changed her. The faraway look gave way to the ambitious immediacy of speed. Dreams gave way to pragmaticism and steps on a ladder. She evolved from a profound but ambiguous haiku to a detailed Excel spreadsheet, loathing lack of clarity. Our problems developed because I did not and would not evolve along that path. But then, my path hardly gave me cause for self-righteousness. Aside from completing this song called Paralyzed, I was not writing any songs at all, was I? But then, when she sighed, gazing over her coffee plantation in Africa, and whispered, "Well, that's what I used to want," that timeless Joanna emerged again. Perhaps her missing what we once had revived the poetry in her, or perhaps it was, in fact, due to some successful intensive therapy, or perhaps not being near me. This exquisite abandonment of desiring all that Manhattan ambition told her she ought to desire made my heart alight on some warm, ancient breeze. But my heart had fucking jumped the gun, for the tenor in her voice suddenly hardened as she completed her thought. "And it's what we still can have. We can still become the Layworths. We can still have that apartment. If you would just get on some goddamn antidepressants and start writing again, we can have it all. We can have gorgeous children, the second house in the Hamptons, you and me." I bit my impulse to describe how marred the Layworths' perfection really was underneath, because I realized I'd need to reveal my prolonged observation of 2 men frothily fucking the shit out of each other first. Joanna? You don't even know the Layworths. I know that I've got 5 years left to have a baby before I end up like that, she indicated the beach whale. And you end up looking like one of them, she indicates the couch potatoes. Look at me and tell me that's really what you want to become? She was valiantly fighting back tears, stiffening her shoulders, swallowing hard, and I was saddened. She'd become too much of a New Yorker to cry openly and freely anymore. To my surprise, I found myself suddenly very protective of my neighbors. Sure, I could smear shit over their lives with my silent monologue, but that was reserved only for me and my vituperous abuse, not for anyone else. Marsoli's word leaped back into my brain and out my lips. You don't know anything about them. Do you still love me? That's a fucking awesome question. Well, I haven't written a song about you for a long time. It's a fucking rotten answer. She absorbed the response like a crash test Honda against a brick wall at 60 miles an hour, but in excruciatingly slow motion. In spite of the cruelty of what I said, her slow response did her credit. It was acknowledgement that she was vaguely aware of how much she'd changed since we met, and not all things was for the best. Joanna's tears finally fell, and it was not a kind of hold-me cry. She grabbed her purse and headed to the door. I wish you just wouldn't have answered. Joanna, she stopped me with a look of sudden sternness, punctuated by opening the door. She suddenly spoke with a firmness and coldness that would set aspic. I'll come back in 2 weeks. You're not thinking straight. I can see it in your eyes. You'll change your mind. We can have it all. I know you want it to. I know you at least want to try. She put up her hand to stop my response. Don't say another word. 2 weeks. Joanna pulled some bills out of her purse and placed it on a stack of dusty music on my piano. And this is for your Verizon bill. Why don't you clean up this place? God, it's a dump. Fuck, you mean I didn't have to put the song Paralyzed out into the world after all? Joanna exited in full Manhattan stride once again, leaving the African coffee plantation millenniums away and a carrot 40 years in the making hanging from the doorframe right in front of this ass's muzzle. I could bite it. I could bite it this time. I turned to the window. The couch potatoes had brought home massive hamburgers from Galaxy Diner and were slathering mayo all over the buns. The beached whale hefted her body out of the futon and lumbered down the hall. The Perfect's apartment remained in darkness, and the bedroom curtain closed. When Joanna looked at these folks, I knew what Joanna saw, but she had no idea what I really saw. The beached whale lumbered back into view. In contrast to Joanna, the beach whale had none of the feminine habits New York women had. She did not toss perfectly conditioned hair back with a laugh. She did not tuck locks of highlighted strands behind her ear to guarantee anyone's unobscured view of perfectly blushed cheekbones. She did not move her lips to form controlled, lip-glossed smiles of measured expressions of concern. She did not keep her cell phone at her side and glance discreetly at it every 5 minutes for that next thrilling tidbit of communication, and she did not run her fingers through her hair to punctuate every sentence. The beached whale sank deeply into her couch, positioning herself on her side to watch television, propped up on her left forearm and hand. She placed a bowl of popcorn in front of her and began munching in the flickering light, one dim floor lamp highlighting her features, obscured only by the soft gauze of a lacy curtain. The lacy curtain began to lift on a night 3 decades ago in Northern California. Paul and I woke up at 2 a.m. at the same time to a sliding closet door being slammed shut, followed by equally hollow, terse words between Mom and Dad. Some fragments shot through the dark, through the door, and bounced down the stairs. My liver is not your problem. Get a goddamn job, then we'll talk about my issues. At 8 years old, we were already trained to recognize the kind of nighttime discussions Mom and Dad that would fizzle into silence, and the kind that would end up with the sharp, hollow cracking of a window breaking, and the high, angry skid of a car pulling out of the driveway. That night, the sounds from the above were the latter. Without a word, Paul and I slipped off our bunk beds and into our corduroy pants, like shoes, like firemen sliding into their overalls and boots at the sound of the alarm. In the moonlight, I could see our hot rod tracks on the stained yellow carpet. A daddy longlegs crawled across one track. The perpetually damp and moldy room attracted spiders. The first time we saw one, we cried for help from Dad. But he promptly took down our pants and whipped our bare asses with an orange plastic racetrack in punishment for staying up after we were told to go to bed. So we quickly got over being scared of crawling things in the night. Paul and I slipped out the window into the moonlight of the park. Crickets, tall silhouettes of trees, the strong scent of damp bark, cool, moist air, a thin haze of fog translucent in the moonlight, an owl call and low, encouraging hoots high above us in the eucalyptus trees. Berkeley Tilden Park was still. We could make our way to the Indian caves and spend the night on the leafy bed, but on the other hand, a single light was on the shadowed house across the valley. This was the house of an older woman we knew as Sally. Sally knitted a lot, always toting around a carpet bag full of bright-colored balls of string and long metal and wooden needles. Paul and I would see her at the bus stop knitting furiously, furrowing her brow beneath her glasses, a whirlwind of thought being contemplated. Like the beach whale, Sally was a large girl. In fact, Paul and I used to think of her when we watched Disney's Fantasia and the hippos and the tutus appeared. Sally walked delicately and preciously, doing her best not to cause ripples in the world. Cheerful, but shy, friendly, but never presumptuous enough to expect friendliness in return. We only knew Sally's name because when I was first learning to ride my bike, my black and silver Huffy dirt bike, I had reached a speed that caused me to freeze, unable to brake or steer. And that's how I ended up with my face in a pile of bricks in front of Sally's house. Because my parents were in no condition to drive me to the hospital due to a bottle of rum that they'd received from Dad's buddy, Hank, Sally took me and got my forehead stitched. And I was in such a bloody mess I didn't remember too much about Sally, except that weeks later she gave me a heavy 3-foot-long red metal fire engine when she came to see how I was healing. I had been pulling out confusing new blue and yellow stitches I discovered in my forehead. In her perky, upbeat, high-pitched voice, Sally explained that all of us were made of blue and yellow thread like that throughout our bodies. If I pulled my threads out, nothing would hold my body together and I'd fall on the floor in a puddle of jello. She smiled to let me know that she was joshing me, and I giggled. I also stopped pulling out the stitches from my forehead. Sally lived alone. As we approached her lit window in the dark, we saw that it was open and gauzy white curtains parted slightly and undulating slowly in the light breeze. With the glee that we always got when we felt we were getting away with being naughty, we approached the window. We heard Johnny Carson and laughter of studio audience and saw the flickering of the television's cold blue light. This was disheartening. Spying on television watchers was as boring as watching a rock harden. But this did not deter us. Juniper bushes were a mixed blessing. On one hand, they provided incredible covered passageways for us to get from one side of the yard to the other. On the other hand, they scratched and stung our skin a lot. 15 feet from the window under the branches of the bushes, we stopped as we heard the television get turned off. The light from the table lamp near the window filtered through our bushes like rays through lace. We cocked our ears, listening. We could hear the scraping of wood on wood like a piece of furniture sliding on the floor, but that was all. The black, moist soil darkened our knees as we neared 10 feet, 8 feet. Our hearts always beat delightfully fast as we neared a victim. We silenced our breathing as best we could, even when the sharp, protruding juniper root gouged into our thighs or forearms, drawing blood. We made no noise. 5 feet, 2 feet. Crouching beneath the window, we slowly inched our way up the brown shingled wall until we could peep through the window. The curtain swayed before our noses, and then we saw her. Sally was standing on a pink crochet cushion atop a wooden chair beneath the beam that traversed the vaulted roof. Hanging from the beam was a colorful, thick, knitted rope fastened into a noose. We recognized the rope. We'd seen Sally knitting it for the last 4 weeks at the bus stop at the corner of Wildcat Canyon Road and Woodhaven Road. We thought it was a thick scarf. Obviously, we were wrong, for Sally was now inserting her head into a loop of the intricately detailed noose. Paul then did something he never did. He betrayed us with a single utterance. Don't! Not a scream, not an exclamation, just a soft mumble, as if his inner monologue had cautiously peeked its head out from the earth just to see if the coast was clear, and then withdrew in a flash to safety. Don't! Sally heard. She turned her head to the window, but not with any alarm or any hint of distress, because the light was positioned between her and us. She couldn't see into the darkness where Paul and I crouched. Yet to this day, I believe she knew or sensed exactly who was on the other side of her windowsill. She'd probably known for years that Paul and I habitually spied on her, and she allowed us to believe we were always too clever to be noticed. As she withdrew her head from the maroon lime and cobalt blue knitted noose, the expression on her face remained as calm as if all she'd chosen was raspberry jam over orange preserves. Sally stepped down from the chair and scraped it back under the dining room table, which housed her collection of empty jewel-red glass decanters. She took 5 dainty steps to the quilt-covered couch and exhaled slowly and fully, sinking deeply into the cushions. She turned on the television on again with remote control. Johnny Carson, studio audience laughter. Except for that one time on the chair, Sally never looked toward the window at all. Wordlessly, Paul and I felt each other's desire to pull away from Sally's privacy. We walked along the side of the house rather than face the barbs of the juniper again, stealthily avoiding making any noise in the pebbled petunia garden. Sally's gauzy window light grew fainter and fainter. When we reached our side of the valley, the fog had grown thicker. We looked back across the distance and saw a faint dot of window light from Sally's house. The light flicked off. Good night, Sally. It had gotten colder and damper. We snuck through the window to our basement bedroom. No sound came from Mom and Dad's room. I guess we were mistaken about the direction that night's discussion would take. Both cars were parked in the front. No skid marks, no shattered bottles, no fuming mutterings. 2 daddy longlegs traversed our orange hot red rod track. I guess one had found a friend and invited it to come out to play. We crawled into the lower bunk together and watched the spiders dance until we finally fell asleep. Would I have tried to save Sally, as Paul did? I wasn't the one who uttered "don't." I wasn't the one who saved her, but given another chance, would I? Or would I have preferred to witness the horrifying once-in-a-lifetime spectacle of the tutu hippos stretching the colorful knitted noose taut in a heavy, slow swing? The beached whale's head collapsed on the pillow in sleep, and her bowl of popcorn slid off the couch and dropped to the floor, spilling yellow. No, Joanna did not know this lady as I did. But so what? Joanna's point was she did not want to become the kind of New Yorker who fattened up on popcorn on a futon watching life through pixels. No matter what past experience substantiated that kind of life, no matter where we'd been, we had choices to make now. And Joanna refused to allow herself to select the beached whale's existence. She refused to allow me to select it either, and how does one argue with that? I could ignore all of Joanna's shortcomings and adjust to her evolution as a New York chick in pursuit of what she called having it all. I could authentically become a we for the first time since Paul and I wordlessly slipped out of each other's lives. I could have a beautiful woman to share the day's shit with as I donned the silk pajamas she would inevitably give me some Christmas day. I could clink a Pottery Barn porcelain plate of quiche Lorraine onto our marble kitchen island for her on Sunday morning as our own perfect little Hunter, our own perfect little Felicity ran around us in happy, mindless frolic. I could reach for that designer duplex martini-clinking Manhattan star. And yet, Marsoli had awakened something powerful, a fresh calling that was slowly tipping the scales towards something entirely different, unexpected, and weighty. The most surprising realization of all was that I was not opposed to the labels associated with this leaning as I would have thought I'd be, even though I knew so little about it. What would the road that begins with a stubbled jaw brushing against another stubbled jaw lead to? What were the micro and macro details of that road? Of a morning begun that way, of a night that ended that way? Would it be better? Worse? Worth it? Would it fit me? 2 weeks. Just 2 weeks, and Joanna would be asking for my thumbs up or thumbs down on all I'd never had and so much I'd always wanted. But then, like Sally's rope, was what I'd always wanted been the equivalent of the incremental crafting of something colorful and intricately detailed, but ultimately rather deadening. It never occurred to me that the next would include such a paramount fork in the road. My heart beat faster at the thought. I closed the curtain as the beach whale dozed. Well, Marsoli was right. It was not a nice name at all. Good night, lady. Oh, fuck it. My feet could never be laced into goody two-shoes. Good night, beached whale. Perhaps I should go back to sleep, too. Thank you.